Yeah, they'll set the same as last time.
That's how it works, I guess.
What was that?
Yeah, they'll set the same place as last time.
I'm gonna smoke.
Do you have any? You
No.
want me to smoke more?
No,
Oh.
his cut. Who was like, giving off Steve, and I was like, what?
Oh, you thought she said someone smokes Steve?
Oh.
You could try. That'd be a
I'm sorry.
failure.
I know you're really not getting across there.
It's the receiver. It's the receiver. It's not the...
So,
So we're gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order at 5:31.
Alright, Keith Lambert,
Here.
Alexander McKay, Stephen Diamond,
Yep.
Patrick Malloy, here. Amy Moore, Tyler Smith,
Here.
here. Quorum.
Great. We're going to go move to approval of the agenda, number 1.5. Motion? Motion by Tyler.
And a second.
Second by Patrick.
Steven.
Any discussion on the motion?
Just looking at it.
Alright. There's no discussion on the motion. We will move to a vote.
Well, a little discussion. Is the South Lounge occupied?
South Lounge is on reserve by 9/11 Truth at this time.
I don't know. Just since we're going through procedure and everything, do we need to procedurally change South Lounge to campus
South
chat?
Lounge.
Conference room.
This is
No.
conference right now.
Just making sure, because that's pretty big.
So, approval of the agenda. We'll move to a vote. Any discussion? Further discussion? All in favor?
Well, I just have one question. Some of the complaints were on similar issues, like the 3 days thing. Are we going to like go over it again for every person's complaint? When we go through it? Or
What's your question?
Our code says that any and all complaints, that the burden of proof lies on the complainant, and I think that all 4 different complaints touch on very different aspects of the same problem, and I do think that each complainant should have the opportunity to express where they're coming from personally.
And then that's,
Thank you for your input. Just for procedural purposes, I believe since you're not part of the committee, you can't just chime in. But
It's true, but that's what our code says.
Okay, but I do appreciate your input. So, to that point of information, yes, we'll proceed. Each person that has filed a complaint will have time to form their complaint and then have that be heard by the committee. Any other further discussion? All right, we'll move to a vote. All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? The agenda is approved. So we will move along to the chair's report, which is mine, which is very brief. I just ask that everybody remains cordial, professional, and polite during these proceedings. We can have differences of opinions, but there are bodies set in place to deal with these things, and that's what we're here trying to deal with them. So keep those things in mind: cordial, professional, and polite. Also, before we get going, I just would like to remind everybody that the AS is, in their Articles of Incorporation, number 3, we are subject to the Ed Code, which points to the Board of Trustees setting down laws that we must abide by, and HSU setting down laws that we must abide by. So keep those things in mind when you're forming your complaints today. Other than that, I'd like to move forward to public comments. Public comments?
I'll be brave. Okay, so I wanted to go ahead and inform the committee, council, whatever the heck this is, about my email correspondence with Ray Murillo, who is the Associate Director of Student Programs in the academic affairs student academic support of the Chancellor's Office on questions regarding this issue. He stated to me, the CSU policy for minimum qualifications for student office holders address the requirements for incumbents and candidates. However, the memorandum does not stipulate when a campus must check eligibility. The general practice at campuses I have worked is to check eligibility prior to the election, prior to the start of the elected term, and prior to each academic term. I attached a memo for your reference, which is the minimum qualifications for an office holder. In addition, there is no system-wide policy that governs student elections, so I cannot comment specifically on the questions that I had. For the CSU perspective, in my past student affairs role, I typically would have the conversation with the student and consider officially withdrawing from the election only if the eligibility issue cannot be resolved. So that was Ray's comments to me. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Good work on this issue too.
Any other further public comments?
Can I point of information real quick? We're on public comment for the agenda item, correct?
Yeah, each agenda item will go in there and have an opportunity for public comment.
Yeah.
I'll wait until we get to that matter.
Okay. Further public comments?
My only public comment would be that these are complex issues. I appreciate you guys taking the time to come and do this. I would just really appreciate, I know that in my own experience lately when there's been controversial issues, specifically one that administrators or staff feel strongly a certain way, that conversation has been squashed, random time limits have been set on people. I do hope and think that this should be completely 100% cordial, and I also do not think that any of these troubles derive from the mission. It's a new situation, and I just really hope that you will allow the time for the complainants to fully express their concerns and have them addressed. I'm also quasi-concerned, is our fifth commission member not going to be in attendance today?
You can't make it.
So that will mean that that will significantly change the ability of the commission to get everyone's participation and vote and stuff, right?
Well, we have to have quorum, which we have.
Right.
That's one of the issues with
That's true.
special meetings. Like
Right.
you just can't expect everybody to drop their entire life.
Right, so it'll be 3 instead of 5 people deciding. Okay. Thank you.
I did present the opportunity for both to leave written statements and meet open ships.
Okay.
It's just,
One of the things that I brought up in my complaint, I
is
think
this in regards to your complaint? Because you can.
it's just, could you let me finish my sentence first and then respond? One of the components of it is conflict of interest policy and section of your elections code 4.01 and also 5.03. And it says in 5.03, well, first it says in prior articles or sections that they're supposed to be impartial people that sit on the elections commission. And so I was curious, if we're going to address the potential of conflict of interest separately, so that way, you guys aren't Tyler Smith, who I'm questioning his legitimacy and weighing in on these issues, if he's going to be, making motions again before, like, we talk about that issue, and if he'd actually recuse himself. I guess I'd kind of like suggest that should be done for once, but can't be too optimistic all the time, I guess.
So you're asking that Tyler doesn't participate
Yes.
because. Okay. That would be part of your complaint, that he is non-biased, and you would have to prove specifically how he is biased. And this is like something we can address during your formal
Can I make a quick statement? I am prepared to address your concerns with my impartiality. And if that's, I'm not who showed us first, but if that's something that people want to address first, I'm fully prepared to do it.
Yeah, I just think it should be a component that's isolated prior, so
I should also point out that we're not here to reinstate you or any other candidate for that reason. These things have been set down as candidates, not individual persons. So every candidate falls subject to the things that we're discussing today.
And alleged impartiality upon Tyler's part could have been addressed before all of these proceedings had happened, if it was indeed that much of a concern. We're at this point now where decisions have to be made, and if this wasn't addressed before those decisions were to be made, then I don't want to look at that as something that we're going to be dealing with at this moment. This isn't a question and answer time. We're each dealing with our statements here, and Keith has the floor.
He had his hand up before
I mean,
he started talking.
I'll give a quick comment, like Ryan Guy, Legislative Vice President, Associated Students here. I'll just remind you guys that this is a meeting, falls under script just like other meetings, and if this is a public comment section, it's not an appropriate time to have a back and forth conversation, except public comments during the meeting.
Thank you.
Want to say?
That's not how Gloria operates, but I'll just let it ride.
So, are there any further public comments?
I just want to say, as a public comment, just to put it out there, that just me as a student of the association, have full trust in this board and appreciate the issues that you guys are taking on. It's a huge deal. It's a very tension-filled election, and I really do appreciate the amount of time you guys are putting into this and amount of discussion.
Thank you. Dina, public comment. Any further public comments? All right. That being said, we will move on to the old business. First item on the agenda is the review and action of official complaints submitted by Jesse Hughes. Action item: the Elections Commission will consider the complaints submitted by Jesse Hughes and take action if necessary. In regards to how we're going to address the complaints. Basically, each person who filed a complaint will have an opportunity to address the commission and point out specific instances in which they feel they have a valid complaint, and then we'll move on to discussion. I'm not rushing a long time, but I would like to start by setting down an initial complaint time of 6 minutes, and if further time needs granted, then we'll go ahead and proceed with that. Some complaints cite more than others. For instance, Mr. Robo's complaints are quite extensive, so clearly he won't be able to perform those in 6 minutes. But to where certain spots where they only point to one or two supposed code violations. And again, I will be very willing to grant more time if necessary.
Yeah, mine comes from a lot of places, so I would appreciate some more time.
Okay, well let's get started then.
Okay, I guess my main concern thus far is that everything that our code and constitution, which is supposed to be a means for us to effectively operate, whether that's as an election commission or as council, because council is who creates the election commission, and the election commission is subordinate to AS council. So the trouble I have is that all the complaints being voiced, all the concerns come from our code and constitution, and there has not been one justification that comes from our code or constitution. Our code and constitution clearly outlines procedures for these types of things. There is no procedure for redoing elections. Our code specifically states, our constitution, section C1, which I'm sure everyone's heard me reference, specifically states that basically says the election commission has 3 days to rule on eligibility.
We're not dealing with basically here. I'd like a specific where I need to look here.
Let me look here, Luke. Section C1.
Article 7,
Section
C1.
But this is not in here for some reason. The election commission has 3 student days to rule on the eligibility of a candidate after filing. Filing ended on the 7th. Anyone that is not ruled ineligible by the 10th of April is eligible to be in the election. Also, there's nothing that says you have to be eligible to hold office to be able to be in the election. There's also procedures set forward so that if someone who is ineligible or someone who is no longer, as Tony would know, if you're not able to if you're not able to have your job any longer, there's an administrative vice president who is to step up as president. So it specifically says what the procedure is. Also, I think it's really extremely inappropriate that a month before the election, I was told by our AS president that they were intending to have Jason's disciplinary happen the day before the election so that he could be pulled from the ballot, and so that right before the election he'd be pulled from the ballot, then he wouldn't be on it, it would be over and done with. It didn't work out that way. Now every single person in this room is going through this mess, deriving from something that came from the administration of the school and also certain staff members. Section 10, 10.6 and 10.07 of the election code states that no support may be solicited for candidates or special issues from faculty, staff, administration, or non-student employees.
Point of order, this is not in the written official complaint. And if that's what we're dealing with here, we need to stick to that. So if those aren't cited in the complaint, I don't know if we're going to be able to deal with them here.
Well, I know that other people have them in theirs, so I mean they're going to go through it anyway.
And we would respectfully let them deal with it.
But I will say that, first of all, the election commission was supposed to meet within 2 days. It's now been 7 days. So it's very frustrating that the only time I feel, and this is not from this comment, but the only time people want to quote the code and constitution is when it's serving an intended goal or outcome that was trying to go for long before this happened. This isn't in students, this is just another of many administrators and staff meddling in something that's supposed to be student government. So I'll move on. 10.7 also talks about coercion, manipulation, or attempt. So I will move on to section 13, which is in my initial complaint. It says that, I think it's 1304, is it? Can I have a copy of my complaint since I'm being forced to stick to that?
Forced is not the word we're looking for here.
I see, the only other one I see is 17.04.
Well, my original complaint was to get something going so I could come here and talk about all these things. There's a procedure in place for if someone does not get 50% of the vote. And no matter what happens, whether y'all agreed with us and we redid things, whether it goes through, no matter who's president, they're going to be completely corrupted next year. People already have like no faith in their student government. And these are issues that originated from administration and staff that set us up to fight against ourselves. This is the kind of crap that I'm talking about, where if you guys don't want to hear certain things, you try and use random things. What I'm asking you to do is to adhere to our code and our Constitution, which is only being considered when it suits the aims of individuals. This is about the entire student body, the 7,400 plus students that we're supposed to represent, not personal issues. We shouldn't be fighting amongst ourselves and getting into little personality conflicts. We should be acting as a unified body to find solutions, so I would appreciate it if you would allow me to speak without interrupting me, like happens at every single meeting of AS. So anyway, what I was saying is, this revote, or whatever, is not something that there's a procedure in place for. It's never been done before. It's completely been fabricated. There's no reason why the top 2 people should not have their runoff. And I think other people are going to be addressing a lot of other things. I think everyone knows that there are some very funky interrelationships, both good and bad, in this room. And I think those are superseding the fact that our code and constitution is being totally disregarded because Stephen Butler felt that's the way it should be done, and then staff pushed that in there as well. So what I'm asking y'all to do is look at the code and constitution, which states that if one candidate does not get 50% of the vote, you hold a runoff between the top two candidates. If we want to do an election, the point of the commission being founded was so that students, free from administration and staff, can make sure that our election is free and fair. And I can tell you that myself and many other students do not feel this process is free or fair in the slightest. And it looks bad on all of us. This is going to taint the next school year, and it's not the way that I want to start a new year, that we're supposed to be working for students and not having these little interpersonal dramas. So anyway, I will defer to other people in their complaints, and I will just ask that all people involved in the process, whether audience or commission, not just fabricate and twist facts that have been spit down from administration to suit their personal aims. I would appreciate it if we could look at what our code and constitution says, only our code and constitution, and stand by that. As you had heard from Rachel Rodriguez, someone who I believe most people in this room have a lot of respect for her hard work and efforts and knowledgeable things or whatever. She had just said, there's no procedure from the Chancellor's office or anyone else regarding elections. So anything else, quoting random abstract CSU stuff that has nothing to do with elections, is complete and total fabrication to suit administrative needs over those of students. And what we're here to do is represent students. So I'm asking people to please stick to our code and constitution, and we go with the procedures that are laid out before us, so that when these things happen, we don't have to go through these things. And if the code was followed from the very beginning, none of us would be sitting here in the first place. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So at this point, the commission will address those complaints put forward, and then just further discussion will happen, and then we'll move on to the next complaint. Or should we rule on each?
Yeah, that's my question. Like,
okay, we'll have to make a ruling on each item.
yeah.
Can I just have a clarification? So will discussion just be happening within the board and everybody else is quiet, and that's how it'll go?
That's how it's set forth.
Okay, awesome. That's just, I just wondered.
We can yield time
Yeah.
to people in the public if we feel the need.
Yeah, I would just a point of order. I know your normal operation when you have these meetings is that you do at the beginning of an agenda item have an opportunity for, comment from the audience. I'm a student here and I have to leave in 5 minutes. I apologize for not being able to spend more time, but I was just wondering if I might offer just a very 1 minute quick piece to you all, if that's okay.
Sure.
Well, I mean, we just did have the general time for public comment, and it was missed. Is it really in specific to this agenda item, or is this just a thought that came up?
No, it's specific to this agenda item.
Well,
Thank you, I appreciate that. My name is Sunil Madrone. It's my second time here at Humboldt. I got my bachelor's here in '75, and I'm back working on my master's now, and lived in Humboldt for 35 years, and Humboldt State to me is like a very sacred institution. I'm not going to tell you what all to do, but I can tell you as a student, I've been very bothered by the processes that have been happening, both in the impeachment of Jason as well as the re-election attempt, the vote attempt for a second run with Jason not on the ballot. Both those things I think are wrong. I don't think they follow your Constitution in the way you proceeded with both those things. And I personally, as a student here, would appreciate getting those things cleaned up. You've got a big hole that's been dug, but you can get out of it. It's really quite simple. Provide fairness, whether you agree with Jason or not. I don't agree with everything Jason says. His style for me is very abrasive, but that's not what it's about. What it's about is each of us being treated fairly and respectfully with a set of rules and regulations that we follow. Otherwise, it's meaningless. So that would just be my 2 cents. Thank you for letting me speak.
okay. So, excuse me. So in regards to Jesse's complaints, starting at Article 7.
before you start discussing, once the next level of motion, in a second, to approve, and then we go to discussion.
So, a motion to act on this action item?
What's the procedure if we don't want to? Because
Keep an eye.
I'd love to hear everybody, but to go and vote on a bunch of things that are repeated is definitely a waste of time. As a lot of people post it, this whole thing is a waste of time. So what? We can motion to open this for discussion.
We can, I believe that possibly we could motion to hear all complaints and then respond to all complaints and then make a ruling on all of them at once.
I feel a little unclear about the process.
Okay.
I don't know what I would motion to say I'd like to move on. I don't know what I'd like to motion to say I'd like to entertain this and vote on something.
Tyler?
I mean, the way I see it right now is we have complaints from students, and that cite specific pieces of code. And this comes back to my original question with, if all these students are citing the same pieces of code, are we going to discuss the same piece of code 6 times and vote yes or no on the same piece of code 6 times?
That's not what happened.
That's why I brought that up. But I think that what we have to do is either make a motion to approve, like say, we approve this complaint, or we don't approve this complaint. Am I right? I mean, I don't know.
Y'all shut me down from talking about certain parts because you said that other people were going to be addressing them, and if you don't know what the procedure is, it shows you how jacked this process is.
Point of order.
I'm not on the commission, so I don't have to be on the order.
You can be removed, Jesse.
You're not respectful of the police coming here and haul me out or something.
Please respect the situation, Jesse, and just let us talk. You had your time, and we respected that. We're going to talk now, and we're going to come to some sort of decision, whatever that may be. It needs to be talked about. It's not set up in a situation where it can be a back and forth. No. That's a back and forth.
Why don't you listen to people? Instead of trying to squash their stuff.
Everything that we're listening to has been supported in writing. If it's not in writing, there is no listening happening. Okay?
So, moving forward, I guess the first order of business is just to decide whether we're going to hear all complaints at once or we will rule on them individually.
Yeah, I'll make the motion that we hear all the complaints at first because a lot of them are similar. Yeah, there are a lot of differences, but I don't feel comfortable just voting something down and voting something up right now. I'd like to hear everybody's side of the story.
So, a motion to hear all complaints at once.
Second.
Move to a vote. All in favor of hearing all complaints at once?
Aye.
All not in favor? Abstain. That passes?
Yeah, he just basically took himself out of the voting, so it would be unanimous with one person abstaining.
Alright, so that being said, we will now hear a complaint submitted by Luke Ferrari.
Great. Man, beautiful day, isn't it? Jeez, too bad we're stuck in here talking about all this serious stuff.
Seriously.
First of all, I'd just like to say thank you guys very much. This is a really stressful situation for all parties, and I appreciate you guys listening to these complaints and all that good stuff. So, the following is a direct quote from Article 7C1. The Election Commission has 3 days to rule on candidate. So, this has already been iterated, but just to reiterate, Jason was not found ineligible. And there's nothing in the Constitution that talks about finding him ineligible. So I think that is unconstitutional. 1301 of the Election Code, in the event of a tie or if a candidate of the executive office fails to receive the required majority, a runoff election shall be held for the 2 candidates with the highest vote total. And nowhere do I see anything about what to do if administration finds somebody ineligible. All of this Constitution is lacking in, it doesn't address the situation. and I feel that I know you guys are we're using your best judgment in saying this revote needs to occur, but I feel like it was a misjudgment and it's not in the Constitution. And basically, the thesis of what I'm saying is I would like to go by the Constitution and not use somebody's subjective reasoning on what they believe the next step should be. And yeah, just please follow the Constitution because that's all we've got, and everything else is just subjective. Thank you very much.
Do we give public comment before, excuse me, point of order. Do we give public comment before or after a person submits their claim, submits their complaint? We did it afterwards with Jesse's complaint. I just wondered.
I would refer to our alleged VP, Ryan Guy.
On your agenda, did you agendize every person's complaint individually?
Yeah.
You guys moved to group them all into one? Because normally what should happen is before every action item on an agenda, public comment should be taken prior to that action item. So, since you guys moved them all together, like I don't even know if you can technically do that. If you can group action items together under one agenda point once you've already approved an agenda.
Okay.
So, it's kind of getting a little complicated there.
Yeah, one motion to realize was wrong.
Excuse me?
So there's one motion to realize it was wrong.
Yeah, point of order. People's snide remarks, swear words, anything of that nature is duly noted and not appreciative and not a part of this. So please hold back your comments, your giggles, your cuss words for when you have the floor to speak at least.
Do you want us
We're
speak on this?
We're at a point of order where we don't know
We have to determine
the procedure.
So, at this point, I think we should determine one, are we allowed to group all things together? And if we're not, then we'll have to make a ruling on them individually. So, I guess this would have to reference Gloria Romero, and I don't have a copy of Gloria Romero.
I do.
But it's not actually in there, but if you'd allow, I could offer.
Paraphrasing is unacceptable at this time.
No, you can have Gloria Romero, but it doesn't talk about that. But when an agenda has been posted and then action items are individual, you have to allow public comment before each one. You can suspend the order of the day and you can group things together, but that doesn't alleviate the fact that people are able to public comment on action items that were posted on your agenda. And I do have a copy of Gloria Romero here for your reference.
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing, I think would be legal would be to allow for public comment before each item, but to table a decision until all complaints are heard. Yes?
Fine.
Okay. So we will hear public comment prior to, for C and D, we'll hear public comment prior to the actual complaint being filed. But since we went through with Luke's complaint without hearing public comment, we'll hear public comment at this time in regards to that. And public comment for Luke's specific item will be limited to 90 seconds. If anybody has anything to say about it. Yes.
I appreciate the way that he expressed himself in regards to his concerns. I do feel the Code and Constitution is all that we have for our decision-making processes. If when things don't fit, we just decide to speculate and make things up. What's the point of having a constitution? What's the point of having commissions? What's the point of having positions if when it doesn't work out we just get to speculate and say, hey, this sounds good, or this has never happened, so let's do it this way. Every single concern, all of these situations are already explicitly laid out here, as Luke mentioned. And regardless of the personality issues in the room, we're here to do a job, and our job, our guiding principles are our Code and Constitution. So I thought it was eloquent the way you went about that, and I appreciate it.
Public comment. Luke.
Yeah, sorry. Just one more thing I wanted to mention is that I think that if we follow the Constitution, we won't. I think we're lost right now because we deviated from it. I know you guys, like I said, you guys have the best intentions, but basically we deviated, so now we don't know what to do. But if we stick with it, we know exactly what to do. There's a runoff between me and Jason. If Jason wins, the vice president takes over, and it's that simple. And problem over.
If my appeal wasn't heard.
If his appeal isn't heard.
This is a whole other issue.
I think, and I understand that everybody's very frustrated with this issue, and I understand and respect that many people feel it a waste of time. But I feel that there is, honestly, like, there's definite condensation going on in the way that people are getting addressed, and I think that people have come to this meeting with their minds made up, and they're doing this to shut us up, and it's obvious in the way that we're being treated and the way that we are being addressed. I think you're awesome. I think you're wonderful, and I understand that you're frustrated, but you're coming off very aggressive, and it's and I'm not trying to, you know.
Are you speaking to me as an individual? Because this is the time to address the group.
Okay, well, as a group, the group is coming off very, very, very aggressive and very condescending towards the people who are making complaints. We are the next AS, and you are delegitimizing us in the eyes of everybody in this room by treating us the way that you are, like we are inferior. Just because you guys are in positions of power now does not mean you will be in positions of power later, and I think that needs to be remembered. And this is not here. We are not here to. This isn't about anybody. This is about a situation, and I think that it's become very personal for certain people involved. And I understand it's a nice day and people want to go out and, you know, play frisbee golf and all of that jazz. But like, we as the complainers have a right to be respected, just as you as the election commission has a right to be respected. And it's a reciprocal relationship, and I think that relationship has been very violated by the tones that the members of the election commission have been using when addressing the complainants.
Nikki was next.
I was wondering if there's anything in the code stating that when a problem arises that's not spelled out, how you go about solving it.
Section 17, I believe, references the commission to deal with complaints. 17.01, the elections commissioner shall be empowered to call a special meeting of the elections commission in accordance with the Gloria Romero Open Meeting Act in order to review alleged election code violations. So we're deeming right now, later in that it says 17.5, the elections commissioner may make an effort to resolve any and all complaints and disputes informally. I attempted that and that didn't work, so now we're at this point right now. So we're meeting to discuss it and make a ruling on it.
I think she was saying that, or what you're saying that, is there anything in here that says if something isn't addressed directly in the code, i.e. an ineligible candidate during the middle of elections, what does the Elections Commission have the power to do? Is that what you're saying, or asking?
Yeah.
Pretty much. What I'm going into regards to is I don't remember which one we said it, but something along the lines of fairness and like fabrication. But if it says like in a code that if a problem arises and you guys have to figure it out, then technically that is following a code because the code says that they decide. So, did I make that question clear?
I know.
How does it say that you solve a problem?
1.04 will answer. Hopefully, will answer this question. Decisions of the Elections Commission shall constitute the final authority of the associated students. That doesn't outline a process of this procedure, which is unprecedented. That doesn't outline how we deal with it. It just says what we do is the work. And I'd like to remind everybody of what, if this is an appropriate time to do so, because I will.
We're in public comments right now, so.
Sorry.
Tony, Nikki, were you done?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I have a point of clarification, I guess.
Yes.
Just a question. When this public comment comes after a complaint, are the public comments solely supposed to address the complaint, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other comments, Jason? Addressing the complaint.
I'm addressing the complaint and the dialogue on the complaint, so please don't misinterpret my words as not taking part on the complaint. But yeah, I think it's pretty egregious error that you're backstepping on public comment. When I asked earlier if you have a public comment for each agenda item, you moved forward to Jesse's and then didn't give one until Luke and Sunknown was in here. And so I think that was pretty ridiculous. And so this process is already flawed in itself. And then also, Steve just addressed this himself. Ironically, that when he's trying to create order, that he's also being out of order, and I think that that's kind of a double standard. And then to get back to what Luke was talking about in the first place, is that this is completely unconstitutional. And I guess you're just trying to emulate what we're seeing in our country, and that's pretty much a vast nature of unconstitutional actions. And I hope that, we can turn the tide here and actually stick to, your policies you have outlined that tell you what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be a conduit for the student voice and a conduit for justice, but I'm seeing the opposite paradigm here, and I'm pretty disgusted by it.
Thank you.
I just want to say it would make things a whole lot easier if, since you're the commissioner, you're the chair of this meeting, it would be really appreciated if, whether it's commissioners or audience members, all comments should be directed at the chair. Like when you use individuals' names and they feel defensive, and it's come from both sides, but people feel defensive, backed into a corner. This is not about the personalities in the room, and when we use people's names, that's happened several times from both sides. People feel defensive, and then they're not listening. They feel attacked. I know I've felt attacked. I can see other people have felt that way. So we should just direct everything at the chair.
Okay.
And I also wanted to just say real quick that the commission is the final authority. Whatever you guys say is what's going to happen, but I do feel that the election commission is supposed to analyze complaints in the context of our code and constitution. So I would ask people to please do that. Thank you for your time.
Any further public comments in regards to Luke Ferrari's official complaint? Jason?
I just want to reiterate that me and Luke should be in a runoff, and you should stick to the code and do what it says, and that's pretty much it.
Moving on, so I guess we deem that public comments will be made prior to complaints, so now we will hear public comments in regards to Dina's complaint.
Point of information. So what we're going to do is we have these complaints, and so we're going to go through and hear public comment on every complaint, and then the commission is going to discuss all of the complaints together. We're not going to discuss what was just said, and then hear public comment on the next one, and then discuss. We're just going to do it the first way I said it.
I think, yeah, the first way. I think that's important to hear the complaints so we know what we should be discussing.
Alrighty.
So any public comments on what Dina has to say? Even if she hasn't said
Dina's formal complaint written in internet form, not what she has to say.
See, most people didn't get copies of those. It's kind of stacked the deck against us to be able to.
Which is sort of a shame of the email generation, is that this was sent to not everybody that's involved, and it's a little difficult to get these things. So
And everything was posted outside.
Via email. The code says send it via email.
it does, but it's still an informal thing. So
We're not discussing.
So can you read the complaint?
We can definitely read the complaint. The complaint was also posted per Gloria Romero
Can I read
outside the office.
Spelled my name wrong. Sorry.
can we correct your spelling then?
Yes,
Would you like to spell your name?
There's an N at the end of my last name.
Aguni, pronounce it for us.
Hagunyan.
Hagunyan.
Yes, there's an N at the end of my last
Thank
name.
you.
I'm terribly sorry about the typo.
Permission from the Elections Commissioner. If there is no public comment, I will read this out loud so everybody can hear what Dina has formally complained.
Should you read it
There is
first,
public
point of
comment.
information, and then allow public comment?
Right.
That's what
That's what
you
he
said.
said.
That sounds great. No, that's not what I said, but that sounds very great. To all it may concern, I am writing this violation complaint in response to the Election Commission's decision regarding the ineligibility of Jason Robo's candidacy, as well as the resolution to rehold the general election and their direct conflict with the Associated Student Constitution, as well as the Associated Students Election Code. I see a direct conflict in the following articles. As per section 13.01 of the Election Code, quote, in event of a tie, or if a candidate for executive office fails to receive the required majority, a runoff election shall be held for the two candidates with the highest vote total, 12/00, end quote. A runoff election should be held between Jason Robo and Luke Ferrari. However, no means is a revote constituted in this particular matter due to the ineligibility of Jason Robo due to the Associated Student Constitution. Article 7, Section C1 of the Associated Students Constitution, I'm guessing. I guess we could just put that in there. Okay. The Elections Commission has the number 3 school days to rule on the eligibility of a candidate after filing, end quote. The filing period ended April 7th, and if Mr. Robo was to be found ineligible, it should have happened before April 10th. I, Dina, am submitting this complaint as per the Elections Code 17.01, quote, all complaints of violation of the Election Code must be presented in writing to the Election Commissioner. The complaint must state who, what, where, and how of the violation, end quote. As per Election Code 17.06, quote, failing informal solution, the Election Commission must make a ruling upon a complaint within the number 2, school days of submission to the complaint, 12/00, end quote.
I'm sorry, my iPad turned on.
We'll wait.
Can we be rude? I'm sorry.
It's you.
Just stating
It's
what
not
our-
me, it's his phone.
Just stating what our procedure will be. Thank you. As per Election Code 17.06, quote, failing informal solution, the Election Commission must make a ruling upon a complaint within 2 school days of submission of the complaint, end quote. I find the entire situation deplorable and hope that the Election Commission can find a responsible solution to the above stated issues that coincide with the AS Constitution as well as the democratic principles we are to uphold. Thank you, Dina H.
Public comments on Dina's formal complaint. Gabe?
Okay. Well, alright.
In regards to Dina's formal complaint.
In regards to Dina's formal complaint, yes. I didn't write one out myself because I'm still being briefed on the codes, but I do appreciate that she did. And, yeah, that seems to mirror the concerns that I'm now going to be expected to uphold and report back to the students. So I just want it to be noted that you're also asking me in my future position to tell the students if not all these complaints, especially Dina's and the constitutional issues she's brought up, that you're asking me to tell the students that basically those weren't followed when they seem to be laid out pretty clear. So I just hope that that's also noted.
Thank you. Jason.
I think it's pretty distasteful that the 2-day requirement has been virtually ignored, and I think it's kind of outrageous that there was an expectation that an official body can meet informally, as it did on Tuesday, and that also, that was like pretty much the deadline for addressing this, and that's when this meeting should have honestly occurred. And I just wanted to state that from multiple backstepping transpiring in a matter of minutes today here, that it is clear you don't know what you're doing, and that this confusion alludes to how easily a previous misstep of improperly initiating an election occurred. You can recognize your error now honorably or dishonorably without recognition, and future repercussions should follow.
Thank you. Rachel.
I just want to thank the Commission for all their hard work on this topic, and I understand that it was tried to resolve informally at first. But in regards to Dina's comments, I just want to reiterate what Ray Murillo said, that eligibility should be checked prior to the election, which means if Luke and Jason were the top getters of votes, and Jason was ineligible to run for the runoff, then Luke and Crystal would have been able to go ahead and gone in the runoff.
Thank you.
But thanks for your work.
Further public comments. Jesse and then Dina.
Yeah.
It's your formal complaint, so you'll be discussing it.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, Jesse.
It's just kind of hard. In a free marketplace ideas, like in a democracy and whatnot, if your ideas are solid, they can, uphold public scrutiny. So it's just kind of hard because I feel like we're all being backed into a corner in many ways. There was the informal meeting we had where there were several other concerns brought forward, and now we're being told, since it wasn't an email that we sent out right after decision was made, that those things can't be brought forward. Dina yesterday had talked about 10.5 and 10.7, where it says that candidates are responsible for their, actually it's 10.6, no support may be solicited for candidates or special issues from faculty, staff, administration, or non-student employees of the university. 10.07 goes on to say university staff shall not coerce, manipulate, or attempt to influence students in the voting process. This also includes referendums, initiatives, recalls, and amendments to the Constitution. So I just wanted to throw in there that her concerns, I feel, were extremely valid, and I appreciate them. I also don't like that not one person on the commission or the commissioner has addressed any concerns using something from our code and constitution, and the only thing was the chancellor's office, and then another student said they contacted someone at the chancellor's office and said that there's no anything going on, that we don't have any procedures for what to go for a vote. So all this stuff is speculation. This first time these issues, the story we're being told about eligibility, the first time we heard that was when this meeting happened last Friday, and Stephen Butler said that, and then Joan said that, and then Joan whispered in someone else's ear and asked them to read something that they read to the commission, and now that's the same official story. And I would just like to say that several students have been talking about, oh well, then we can just go through a recall. So then, if two people that should never have even been in the runoff...
Jesse, I ask you to keep your comments in relation to...
I'm asking you guys to consider the implications, because if we do a recall, then you guys got to get called back in again, and we got to go through this whole dog and pony show again. So just please think about please bring something from our code and constitution, and please at least pretend that our code and constitution has some relevance to student government. That's what I'm asking.
Point of order, I'd like to remind people that...
No comments. You said there was no dialogue.
Point of order.
That's not a point of order, but go for it.
Your dialogue is not appreciated.
You're making up stuff, Steve.
Oh.
Can we open the door, actually?
Yeah.
Get stuff in here.
I'd just like to remind people that what the commissioner said at the beginning of the meeting stands true to this point. Where AS gets its jurisdiction from is from the administration, is from the CSU Board of Trustees, is from the California Code, is from the U.S. Educational Code. And that's all I have to say, because that was stated as fact at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay. We move on to Dina's formal complaint.
Do I get to talk about why I think my complaints are justified? Is that the
yeah.
order?
Yes.
Okay. My first complaint was section 13-01 regarding was that the eligible?
Yeah.
Was that the? Okay.
That's the that's the runoff.
Okay. Can I'd like to address the eligibility one? 7C1. You guys have 3 days from the time. I appreciate that the election commission was put in a very unique situation, but I don't think it was your situation to be put into. The election commission's job is to make sure the elections are run smoothly and safely, and that everybody is eligible to run. Jason Robo is eligible to run. Whether or not he was eligible to hold office is not a matter of the election commission's concern. That is a matter of the AS's body. I understand logic leads us to believe that if somebody is ineligible to hold office, they should be ineligible to run. However, your logic, and it does not, there's no room for your logic when there's AS code. Unfortunately, I know that it stinks, but that's the reality. We have codes, we have conducts, we have ways that we have to approach things. You said in the informal meeting, well, I would think logically. There's no room for Keith would think logically. That's irrelevant. You have a code of conduct. the election commission, again, I'm going to restate, the election commission's job is to make sure somebody is eligible to run. Jason Robo was eligible to run. The issue is not whether or not he can run. The issue is whether or not he can hold office, and you guys have official, and I believe you guys have overstepped your jurisdiction and your boundaries by deeming him ineligible, especially because he has on the disciplinary probation, especially because his disciplinary probation is currently under appeal, which means that he was retroactively deemed incapable of holding office by the election commission when it was not your responsibility. It's up to the students to decide whether somebody's eligible for office. As far as the runoff election, or the re-election that we're doing, I think that there's absolutely no code of conduct to justify your support. The election commission's decision to have a revote. If anything, the proper course of action would have been a runoff election between Crystal and Luke, as per AS code, because as per election commission code, because if Jason is deemed ineligible, it goes to the next two highest voters, which were Crystal and Luke. The fact that clear loser, but there was a serious violation of code in the runoff. There was specific ways that you guys could have acted, and you guys chose to disregard the code. This isn't a matter of opinion, it's a matter of code. It's written in black and white.
I just want to give a point of information that you said the election commission deemed Jason ineligible,
Yes.
or the candidate. The election commission didn't deem the candidate ineligible.
That's not true.
Yes, no, the election commission did. The student affairs
No,
said.
can you read it? Because
Yeah.
you're actually higher than even this board is, and maybe it'll make sense.
So, just to clarify what Keith is trying to say is Keith was sent a letter April 23rd, 2008, last Wednesday, from the Student Affairs Office from Steve Butler that said, "Dear Mr. Labert," it's supposed to be Lambert, "this letter is to inform you that Mr. Jason Robo is ineligible to hold student office. As of April 23rd, 2008, Mr. Robo is out of compliance with the Executive Memorandum P07-01, minimum academic qualifications for student office holders, which was attached, and is therefore ineligible to hold student office through spring semester 2009. If there are questions as to his ineligibility, please contact me sincerely, Stephen V. Butler."
Doesn't that completely say that
This
he's
is a true document.
No, because if the
Is
election
it? No, I
commission is
give a point
responsible,
of order.
This is the
No,
propaganda.
point of order.
man.
Point of order. Dina is still voicing her complaint. I gave a point of information to let people know that we did not deem him ineligible.
But you did. You deemed him ineligible to run. All Stephen.
This
We
is
were all here. We're not
ineligible to
stupid,
hold
Gabe.
office.
student
To hold
office.
Then why'd you
office.
vote? Then why'd you vote? He's
Just
Chill, dude. It's not gonna help anything.
Exactly.
Yeah, man.
And he's ineligible to hold student office. It might seem like an illogical line of differentiation, but there is a line there. There is a difference. It is between being able to hold office and being able to run for office. So all Stephen Butler did explicitly is say that Jason Robo is ineligible to hold office, not to run office. The election commission ruled that Jason Robo was ineligible to run for office. Because, I'm sorry, that's exactly what it says. He's ineligible to hold office. It might seem like an irrelevant line, a gray area, but it's there. That line of differentiation is there. These are not mutually exclusive situations, and you guys are making them mutually exclusive, which goes against the AS code. Sorry.
Can I do more point of information?
This is a point of information, but this is not the time for back and forth discussion.
Okay, this is another point of information then. He referenced the minimum academic qualifications. Candidates are required to have a certain minimum academic qualifications. Candidates.
Okay.
And they're listed, I'm not going to list them all. One of them is good standing and not be on probation of any kind.
Okay, well then that brings back my 1301 complaint that says that a revote with the two highest vote getters should have been had. The idea of a runoff with the two highest getters being Crystal and Luke should have been done. The fact that there's a revote completely violates code. Because if there was a runoff, you would have had to reevaluate both of their eligibilities. Jason Robo would have been deemed ineligible, and you would have had the two front runners running. So even by holding a revote, you guys are still violating code.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
All right. Moving along to, review of official complaints submitted by Jason Robo. I will go ahead and read Jason Robo's list of complaints, and then we'll have public comments on them. I am writing to exercise my right to initiate complaint under 17.04 of the Elections Code, requesting for the following grievances to be addressed as outlined in Section 17. Section 17.06 simply states, the Elections Commission must make a ruling upon a complaint within 2 school days of the submission of the complaint. Due to the nature of the new election being imposed, it is urgent to address this issue before new elections begin. I have also outlined that the new election is improperly being initiated, thus shouldn't proceed with the interest of the student body. Many codes have been violated. Some may be more clear-cut than others. And this is dated 4/28. And he lists, I'm going to read off his list of explanations of election code violations, and he left the room. He does list explanations next to them. So, Election Code 7, Section 4.01, and Conflict of Interest Policy. 3 members appointed by the AS President Terra Rentz. Tyler Smith was nominated by Terra Rentz and appointed February 27, 2008. Tyler has been involved in my impeachment, testified at my investigation, and has had close relations with Terra, whom I've been critical of in public. Election Code Section 4.03. Is Tyler Smith's involvement in the Election Commission impartial? He has been the primary initiator of drafting and subsequently primary author of the articles of impeachment for myself. Questions have been raised about the legality of the impeachment as transpired according to the AS body. Tyler has said that I didn't kiss ass as the primary reason for which wasn't denied at the AS meeting held April 23, 2008. Tyler Smith is good friends with Terra Rentz, whom I have been a vocal critic of, as seen in public and on their MySpace pages attached. Tyler testified against me at my disciplinary hearing the day before the election. Election Code 4.04. Tyler Smith's position on the Election Commission is a means of campaigning against myself as a candidate and in support of the cause Anybody But Robo underground campaign. Election Code Section 4.10. A prompt and accurate tallying of results. Excuse me?
I wasn't talking to you. I'm talking to someone in the audience.
A prompt and accurate tallying of results was undermined by declaring ineligibility on the vote totals in direct conflict with policy outlined in the AS Constitution, Article 7, Section C.1. Nowhere does it say anything about concealing vote totals, nor anything about ineligibility possibly being declared during the election. AS Constitution, Article 7, Section Section 7.1. AS Code states that the candidates can only be eliminated due to the ineligibility in 3 days following the submission of the election packet. Thus, applying ineligibility after this date would not be valid and conflicts with the Constitution. Nothing about ineligibility possible being declared during the election is stated anywhere, and it's obvious the timeline established in this policy for the landmark dates was meant to prevent rather than allow successful possibility. Executive Memorandum P07-01, Minimum Academic Qualifications for Student Office Holders. The code specifically states nothing about administrative oversight. Only Executive Memorandum P07-01, which was dated February 07, and thus creates a burden on the sovereignty of the student governments throughout the CSU, an issue of great concern. It doesn't state that the Student Affairs VP has the authority to arbitrarily impose ruling of eligibility beyond the process outlined in the AS Constitution, Article 7, Section C.1. It does state that the Executive Memorandum applies to specific applies to office seekers and holders. An appeal An appeal is a component of this policy which was not granted and thus violates my rights. Serving as Legislative Affairs VP, as the AS, it has been clear that when the apparent arbitrarily imposed ineligibility for non-academic probation, due to interpretation of this policy, I have been allowed appeal and granted eligibility for office. It is apparently common knowledge that Stephen Butler rarely grants exception for academic matters, treating such students with strict scrutiny. Election Code 4.11. Commissioners should immediately address the issue as they arise. On April 8th, I spoke with Keith Lambert about Crystal Cheney's campaign and her signature gatherers' slanderous techniques when approaching students. Cheney is responsible for the signature gatherers under Section 10.05 listed below. I can provide half a dozen to a dozen witnesses that firsthand were pitched to in such a manner, or witnessed this tactic being used upon others. The matter was to be handled verbally, as allowed by Section 17.05. But more reports have arisen since, and no follow-up was provided to myself since this was addressed. Elections Code 5.03. Elections Commissioner has the authority to remove anyone on the Commission whose actions seek to improperly affect the outcome of the election, which Tyler Smith has sought to do. I would request that Tyler is removed for conflict of interest in making motions that are emotionally motivated and biased. Election Code 10.04. My campaign materials were cleaned up within 48 hours following the close of election. Upon collection, the majority of stakes were missing, mangled, or knocked over. Election Code 10.05. Candidates are responsible for the actions of their campaign committee, whether authorized by the candidate or not. Thus, Cheney should be held accountable for the actions of her associates. Election Code Section 10.07. University staff, which includes AS body members and administration, interference in the voting process is virtually inescapable at this point due to the controversy surrounding my impeachment and resentment for bringing attention to the issue within the body. Also, a continual battle over the legality of impeachment proceedings have added additional negativity, resulting in limiting public comment to inhibit criticism, illegal under Gloria Romero Act, and provoking members to walk out on my comments at meetings, with Tara Holloway distracting and lying to audience members that quorum was lost, which isn't true since they just left the room, not the meeting itself. Rumors of myself having a lack of discipline, eligibility, and even expulsion have interfered with my campaign, which no doubt have originated as a result of Tyler Smith and Rachel Rodriguez's testimony against me. Rachel Rodriguez has on her Facebook an anybody but Robo status. Later it became happy that Robo got eliminated. Terra Rentz is reported to have been informing students on AS how to stress the importance of office of the president in a manipulative way to slander and campaign against myself. Witnesses can be proved for this as well. Administrator Stephen Butler and Randy Darnell Burke have initiated this investigation the day before the election against my will, without consulting me for a date which I could have an advisor consult an attorney, and provide for myself evidence and witness. Stephen Butler told me that we don't have the luxury of time and to just get it done, referring to scheduling a hearing. Holds were put on my record without notice and were not removed when the hearing was imposed in a timely fashion as it should have been. Also, the nature of the hearing date prohibited me from attending the march in Sacramento, which Rachel was primary organizer. It is well known that she has not wanted my presence, and the disciplinary hearing timing caused me to lose my $10 deposit, kept me out of her hair, and served to remove me from the election. These actions have certainly been a determinant in my campaign. Detriment, excuse me. Students have thus been influenced by staff due to rumors, demonization, imposing ineligibility, and administration supervising AS involvement in this witch hunt with Randy coordinating testimony meetings at least once with both witnesses simultaneously. Crystal also sits on the UC board, which could potentially be another issue. Election Code Section 17.12. The necessary conditions for this commission to disqualify a candidate says nothing of administrative oversight beyond the 3-day period previously outlined. It states clearly that the disqualification of a candidate and elections must be initiated with sufficient evidence that violations significantly affected the outcome of the election. Since I had made no violation and no such motions were made and passed, the elections imposed to initiate a new election without me on the ballot and thus invalid. A runoff election is the course of action as outlined in section 13.01. Certainly it is an issue of concern that I have been made ineligible during the election, but this possibility is prohibited under the Elections Code, and the arbitrarily imposed actions under administrative oversight hold no sway in this matter. To recognize the administration's will is to further chip away at the autonomy of the student governance on campus and is a detriment to democracy and the rights of voters and candidates. A nonprofit cannot be exploited to fulfill political agendas, such as that of an administration that is fearful of a candidate that it has actively challenged their job performance, question their legitimacy and legitimacy of authority and pay levels. So that was the formal complaint submitted by Jason Robo. I know this might be bad timing, but I have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, it's moved to motion to take a break here.
Okay. Second by Tyler.
5 minutes.
5-minute break. We'll reconvene at 6:42. Any discussion on the motion?
Just looking at it.
All right. There's no discussion on the motion. We will move to a vote.
Well, a little discussion. Is the South Lounge occupied?
South Lounge is on reserve by 9/11 Truth at this time.
I don't know. Just since we're going through procedure and everything, do we need to procedurally change South Lounge to campus chat? Conference room.
This is conference room now.
Just making sure, because that's pretty big.
So, approval of the agenda. Move to a vote. Any discussion? Further discussion? All in favor?
Well, I just have one question. Some of the complaints were on similar issues, like the 3 days thing. Are we going to go over it again for every person's complaint? When we go through it?
Our code says that any and all complaints that the burden of proof lies on the complainant, and I think that all 4 different complaints touch on very different aspects of the same problem, and I do think that each complainant should have the opportunity to express where they're coming from personally.
Thank you.
You guys all sat in the same place last time.
That's how it works, I guess.
What was that?
You guys all sat in the same place last time.
Do you have any? You want
No.
me to smoke more?
No,
Oh.
his cut. He was like giving off steam, and I was like, what?
Oh, you thought she said someone smokes Steve?
You could try. I'd be a
I'm
failure.
I know you're really not getting the cross there.
Yeah,
Just
It's the receiver. It's the receiver. It's not the.
So we're gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order at 5:31.
All right, Keith Lambert,
Here.
Alexander McKay, Stephen Diamond,
Yep.
Patrick Malloy,
Here.
Amy Moore, Tyler Smith.
Here.
Quorum.
Great. We're going to go move to approval of the agenda, number 1.5. Motion? Motion by Tyler.
And a second.
Second by Tyler.
Steven.
For the CSU perspective, In my past student affairs role, I typically would have the conversation with the student and consider officially withdrawing from the election only if the eligibility issue cannot be resolved. So that was Ray's comments to me. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Good work on this issue too.
Any other further public comments?
Can I point of information real quick? We're going to have public comment for the agenda item, correct?
Yeah, each agenda item or an opportunity for public comment.
Yeah.
I'll wait until we get to that matter.
Okay. Further public comments?
My only public comment would be that these are complex issues. I appreciate you guys taking the time to come and do this. I would just really appreciate, I know that in my own experience lately when there's been controversial issues, specifically one that administrators or staff feel strongly a certain way, that conversation has been squashed, random time limits have been set on people. I do hope and think that this should be completely 100% cordial, and I also do not think that any of these troubles.
Thank you for your input. Just for procedural purposes, I believe since you're not part of the committee, you can't just chime in, but...
it's true, but that's where it goes.
Okay, but I do appreciate your input. So, to that point of information, yes, we'll proceed. Each person that has filed a complaint will have time to form their complaint and then have that be heard by the committee. Any other further discussion? All right, we'll move to a vote. All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? The agenda is approved. So we will move along to the chair's report, which is very brief. I just ask that everybody remains cordial, professional, and polite during these proceedings. We can have differences of opinions, but there are bodies set in place to deal with these things, and that's what we're here trying to deal with them. So keep those things in mind: cordial, professional, and polite. Also, before we get going, I just would like to remind everybody that the AS is, in their Articles of Incorporation, number 3, we are subject to the Ed Code, which points to the Board of Trustees setting down laws that we must abide by, and HSU setting down laws that we must abide by. So keep those things in mind when you're forming your complaints today. Other than that, I'd like to move forward to public comments. Public comments?
I'll be brave. Okay, so I wanted to go ahead and inform the committee, council, whatever the heck this is, about my email correspondence with Ray Murillo, who is the Associate Director of Student Programs and the Academic Affairs Student Academic Support of the Chancellor's Office, on questions regarding this issue. He stated to me, the CSU policy for minimum qualifications for student office holders address the requirements for incumbents and candidates. However, the memorandum does not stipulate when a campus must check eligibility. The general practice at campuses I have worked is to check eligibility prior to the election, prior to the start of the elected term, and prior to each academic term. I attached a memo for your reference, which is the minimum qualifications for an office holder. In addition, there is no system-wide policy that governs student elections, so I cannot comment specifically on the questions that I had.